Okay, good day, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of the Data Resilience SpectrumCast, specifically focused on health checks. And this week, as always, we have our subject matter experts here, Jason Basler and Jim Smith. How are you guys doing today?
Good, Steve.
Great, Steve.
Great.
Thanks.
Great. And today we are actually joined by Todd Johnston. And Todd is a TA or a technical advisor in the IBM data protection arena. And it's great that we're talking about health checks because Todd actually delivers health checks to our clients around their data resilience environment. And so rather than me kind of blather on, why don't I turn it over to Todd? Todd, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, just start by telling us what these health checks are.
Hey, you bet. Good morning. Thanks for having me. So we'll go ahead and kind of flip over to a shared screen. But, the idea with the TA program has been around at IBM for a while. And we launched kind of a new focus last, June, July, August around Spectrum Protect, as you mentioned. And, we've been chartered to go out and meet with, around 360 of IBM's top clients. And as I was mentioning to you in a previous conversation, we've done about 110 of these health checks with the TA assigned account. And the idea is really simple. I mean, one, it's to come in as a TA, get an understanding of the client's environment, do a little bit of a 360-degree view of, where they are with their implementation, where are they within reference to the best practices or the blueprints, kind of do a little bit of a run through, not only on their data ingest, but their database use in health and hygiene, but also a little bit of a cyber resiliency health check. And if it makes sense, maybe I can just go into a screen and kind of show you an example of one. Does that work?
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Okay, great. So what I've got here is basically just a demonstration view, and hopefully you can see my screen okay.
Yep.
But we basically got just a mock-up of a demo account of what the health check is. And I always felt like it's nice to show a customer what the outcome is before you ask them to do it. In our case, this is a very simple macro that's built into the Protect product. Customer runs it in a matter of maybe 30 seconds or less, right? So not real arduous, not real heavy on the system as far as overhead. And then it produces a small, maybe 50 kilobit file. They produce that back to the TA team. And then actually, a large shout out to Sean Freeburn, who has done all of the mechanics in the background for our portal and doing the presentation view of this data. But what it effectively does is gives us a little bit of a walkthrough, maybe 5 main areas. Out of the gate, we're looking at your servers, maybe how many clients they're individually running, get a little bit of history for when that server was implemented. And, in a lot of cases, if you've implemented a large enterprise data solution, maybe 3-4 years ago using a blueprint, a lot changes, right? So it's kind of nice to maybe map that up to where are you now and how does that look? So we look at things like their data ingest, on average and max across the servers. And I'll show you a little bit of a graph of that. And then, maybe their database sizing and where they're at. And anytime you see green, it's typically good. Anytime you see a little exclamation there, maybe there's an opportunity for the TA to double click that or look at, maybe making some recommendations. And then we look at everything from their cloud data pools to their file-based as well as tape. And lastly, and this is probably something Jason would love to know, is that we actually look at the blueprints and try to match up where they fit with small, medium, and large. And so, hey, Jason, wouldn't it be nice if actually clients were out here, taking advantage of the blueprint, right, and able to actually use those when they're, sizing, building, and implementing, their Protect environment, right? So, that's one thing. But two, we try to show them a little bit of a visual representation for, hey, what's your daily ingest look like? And if there's one that we want to drill in on, we can by, kind of talking through this. So we use this as a talking document as much as a report back to the client. And look at trends and things that are useful. I find this area actually be really helpful. The client will maybe give a little bit more backstory on, well, this is what we're using that particular Protect server for. Here's the applications that we're utilizing, and it helps us to get smart. And so, as much as this is an assessment for the client, it helps the TA get smart on the environment quickly, right? So for 30 seconds of spend on a command, we get the data ingest view, we get the blueprint mapping, and then we can kind of come in and do a little bit of a cybersecurity health check, right? So this is just kind of best practices, but the view here is, okay, how are you doing with your database backups? Are you getting nightly, backup of your data protection database environment? And 404 green is good. If we find area where they're not taking advantage of a master key, we kind of highlight that, right? And maybe say, hey, maybe you want to harden your environment a little bit to take advantage of that feature. Other areas, we kind of look at hygiene within not only their log retention. Best practices are 180 days. Maybe sometimes they're shortened that, for 30 days. And this helps support when they open cases. There's a little bit more of a tail, and we have a little bit better, triage when we have that historical logging, right? So we want to, just highlight those areas. And then, this day and age, cybersecurity is a problem, right? So, physical security of the environment is key, but, are you doing things like, do you have the ability to turn on invalid login attempts? It's probably not a good idea to have 0 of 4 servers have 0 login attempt, blocking, right? So maybe we tell them, hey, let's turn that on. That'd be a good idea. And then, always having longer security passwords is a good idea. So we'll walk the client through these, and again, in their individual environment, maybe spend a little more time here, but this is just kind of a courtesy of, cybersecurity. And then I'd say about 50 or more % of the time we spend around software currency, right? So where are you today? And obviously blue is on latest, greatest code. We can talk about features and things that have come out if they're aware or not aware, but we try to take a look not only at their clients and their servers, make recommendations for where they might want to upgrade a few of those, go further and break that down into the clients, maybe a breakdown of what's database versus Linux or what have you in their environment, and talk about that. And then we do a little bit of a software currency across the entire farm. So typically we'll sort based on quantity, focus in on the key big rocks within the customer environment. And then, as a leave behind, once we've spent a little bit of time reviewing this, kind of come back to center and provide this to the customer. It's a great first step. Now we are familiar with not only what they're doing in their protected environment, but their clients. And as it makes sense, maybe we come back and do this on a quarterly basis where we can kind of see trending, right? So this is the TA health check. It is just part of our program. You typically will get introduced to the client, and we'll do this as a first step, 30 seconds for the customer to actually execute. And then we can provide them kind of this resource as an ongoing, assessment.
This is very impressive. I certainly intrigued by all these charts, but out of the 100 or so clients you've sampled so far, are you starting to see any trends?
We are. That's a good question, Jason. I think number one, a lot of times they don't take this perspective of their environment. So they're busy day to day, and they may not realize where they're running up against the bumpers, or they need to add capacity, or how they're managing, some of their storage aspects. So it's always nice just to present this kind of high level view. I think code currency has been huge. We have a lot of new features that are out there. Development's been very busy within the last, 2 years. And, one of the things we're kind of coming up on is we've got some end of life, for 7.x code, which frankly is, 5-6 years old out there. And we've taken this as an opportunity to show clients not only one, hey, where are you at? But, what can we do to help you, put together a plan where we can get you updated with latest, greatest software? Not only one, does that give you new features, but it also, solves a lot of these known APAR and or cyber, exposures that are out there, and it just, making sure our customers are tight. But most of mine that I've gone through, and some of these ranging from 30 servers, some into the thousands, just seem appreciative just to have somebody looking over their shoulder, kind of, looking at the blueprints and giving them a little bit of an update. Maybe it's been a few years since they've seen it. And as you know, Jason, a lot of times they come in and want to have maybe a roadmap, right? So we'll bring in yourself or Jim, or even, the Del Hublers of the world, just to kind of refresh them and say, hey, maybe you need an update on all the new things we're doing within not only cyber resiliency, but maybe OpenShift and Red Hat, et cetera. So yeah, it's usually a great entrance for us to kind of update them on what's new with IBM.
Todd, one of the very interesting pieces of information you're providing is that last set of columns there about the blueprint. You're basically going in and telling them, this is what the system is telling us about your blueprints. Not
Truth.
what you think, but what the system
Right.
does. Can you talk to us about the conversations you have?
Yeah, no, it's a great
information?
point, Jim. Yeah, you bet. So, in this one, sometimes it's a known quantity, but as you well know, over time, somebody goes in with a reference check, and I'll kind of pull that over. The blueprints are an amazing resource where obviously you guys have a hand in it, right? But updated frequently, always changing. Guidance around what is considered state of the art and max capacity 3 years ago may be very different from today, and it's important not only one to be, a lot of our clients, to Jason's point earlier, a lot of them are doing multi-cloud. A lot of them are moving workloads to object storage and or off to the cloud and adding that in. And it's always good to kind of reference check, that with what does the blueprint suggest, right? For state of the art, right number of cores, right amount of memory, right amount of capacity, so that your environment will run, effectively, right? And with this, yeah, it's an eye opener. A lot of times they come in and they think maybe they had built it for small, and then you're able to show them very quickly where they've expanded to medium and medium, not only on their data set, their ingest, it's a whole nother level, but also into their capacity. And so it's a good opportunity to maybe reset and say, hey, you know what, is this working for you? Do we need to make some adjustments? And is your workload balanced, right? Is another one. Maybe it's an opportunity to see how they might take better use of some of their resources and assets over the others. But yeah, putting the facts in front of the customer is always fun because, sometimes it is a surprise. And we like to take that not only once in the beginning to kind of see, hey, where are we? But let's look at that over time, right? So quarterly, maybe we come back and say, hey, how does that measure? Are we on a trajectory, growing this way? Are things flat? Etc. So yeah, I think the blueprints are key as a guidepost, to make sure that we're moving down the road.
Todd, you've covered a lot of things that we cover on the data resilience SpectrumCast and the health check SpectrumCast, and I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it goes all the way from one of the first ones we did was let's take a look at your blueprints, right? You talked a little bit about the fact that clients built out, and we talked about this in the blueprint call, clients build out their environment and then things evolve over time. And what you're really doing is showing the importance of if you don't keep checking, just like you go to the doctor, right? You do the preventative maintenance and health checks on yourself. If you don't keep checking your environment, sooner or later things can get out of control. And basically what you're saying here is let us show you where you are today, right? And then let's make some plans and think about what types of things can we do in the future. I like the code currency thing. We talked about that on one of the other SpectrumCasts. The 7.1 is going end of life, and you're going to want to upgrade. Clients are going to want to know, what does that take? What does that involve? How should I think about my environment? I think Jim, Jason, and I talked about this is a great time to relook at the health check, and I think that's pretty awesome that you can show them, hey, what your environment was yesterday might not be what it is today, and the direction that you're going. So I think that's pretty fantastic. Back to Jason's point, what are some of the things that you guys have done now that the client has seen the health check? What are some of the next steps? Either does the TA become involved? Does the client kind of pick up the ball and say, okay, let me go fix these things? What's kind of the next set of steps?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I don't know if you can see my screen now, but there's a couple of different areas really the TA is focused. And first is where are we? You get the who, what, when, where, and why kind of aspect of where somebody is in their life cycle. For us, that common source of truth in knowing where the customer is today, where there's areas that are great and working well, where there's opportunities for improvement, we kind of get a consensus, right? It puts it all out there, as you said, right in front of you, and we can kind of look at it. And as a TA, part of our focus is, the client is moving in lots of different directions. They've got day-to-day operational stuff to worry about, and the business is driving a lot of their activity. We're sitting back as a coach to be able to say, hey, here's where we are. Where do we want to be, right? And how can we help you guys get there? One of the benefits of the TA team is we're global. We've got, better of 12 resources in the US as well as globally, another group of 12. And, you put that collectively, we collaborate deeply with not only support on a regular basis, but with engineering and with our global team, which is across industries and, various workloads. So what we're able to do is basically bring in that source of inspection and help, but also leverage those resources, right? So we're not part of the sales team. We're not part of support. We're just an advocate for the client. But where we're looking at blueprints and something new comes out, we can be proactive, right? And let them know about flashes and things that are coming up that may impact them a little more proactively as opposed to reactively. And the next step to that is, okay, now we get into some regular cadence, whatever that means for the client, where we can kind of come back to table, review not only their operational aspect within support and cases and things that they've had to want to break fix, but also to revisit this assessment and kind of measure that off of where they are ongoing. And then as we need to, we can make recommendations. If there's questions about upgrades and how to go about it, we can certainly help with that. We can be proactive with support and opening cases when they plan those events, so that we can be not only aware of it, but make sure that if there's any gotchas, we can kind of walk them through the process and just give them that level set, extra, like I said, extra eyes and ears to kind of be that advocate and say, hey, when you go through this upgrade through the weekend, have you thought about your rollback plan, and are there any issues, any gotchas? But yeah, I think honestly, this is just getting in the car with them and where the rubber meets the road, right? And if it meets the ditch, we're there as well. We can definitely help in communication and managing it, but we just want to make sure they're using the latest, greatest software. They have all of their impact, areas. We can avoid customer impact, events and things of that nature. And most of the operations, Jason had asked, or I think Jim had asked, what have we found? We found customers using our latest, greatest code are very happy. And, that's actually the sweet spot. And we want all of our clients to kind of be in that common group, right? You get to 3-4-year-old, software and all of the things going on in the busy world we're in with cloud and innovation. It's really important for them to stay with good hygiene, right? And latest, greatest code. So we're just here to make sure that they don't lose sight of it and, keep that moving down the trail.
Kind of wish Todd was here, because a big part of the reason why we do these health checks is clients get into this situation where they things go awry, and this is kind of why we started this. Things go awry, and then the first thing to do, rather than take a step back and look at their environment, is call support. But
Right.
Are there other things that we're going to start to want to be paying attention to make sure our clients are doing that good hygiene?
So one of the things, Steve, that I thought of right away is the actual data protection. This focuses a lot on the ecosystem itself. But at some point, customers are going to want to know, hey, I'm supposed to be protecting my Oracle farm or my vSphere farm. How am I doing against? How am I measuring against that? So I think that could be an interesting insight to offer to the customers as well.
Well, yeah, Todd, one of the things that we talked about last week was recoveries. I noticed a lot of what you guys do on the ingest side. Do you have any data that kind of reflects and shows, hey, is the client recovering? What's their success rate? Are they meeting their business SLAs? Is that in there?
It's a good question. I don't have any necessarily metrics for it right now, top of mind. But what I will say is that, when you get the rubber meets the road, the guy's actually hands on the keyboard dealing with operationally ingest and recoveries and what have you. And then you have kind of the VP CIO's view that says, hey, my expectation is this, right? And I think one of our opportunities is to engage with both of those levels, right? Because one of our charters as a TA is to not only just do the health check and see where they're at, but to also understand what their expectation is. And, good examples would be, people get ideas of, I want to move to the cloud and I want to offload some of that. And maybe they had infrastructure on-prem before, and later they're going to go off to a network where they're going to be streaming it to some object storage. And just the questions that would come up, right? Have you thought really thoroughly about how you're going to move that out there, how long it's going to take, what your retentions are, and what happens when something hits the fan and you need to bring it back? Do you really have that RTO and that RPO that matches up with the blueprint, and is it viable, right? And are you testing that? In fact, do you have a test environment where you can load the latest, greatest code? I think we provoke some of those conversations as TAs because we're trying to understand, one, what is the actual blueprint that they've implemented, but are they in check, and is there a gap? And sometimes we're the bearer of good news. Hey, there's new features, new technology you could take advantage of. But also we're the guy that say, hey, you know what? Thank you for the health check. Really great information. We noticed there's a gap over here where you've expressed that you have a certain RTO, RPO, and based on the math and the data you're moving, you've gone way beyond that, or maybe you need to to shore that up. Maybe you should put a flash array in. Some of those types of things can come in. And again, we're not sales. We're not here to promote product, but when it comes to architecture and best practice and efficacy, we really are that voice to say, hey, here's where you are, here's where you could make some improvements, et cetera. So I don't know if I answered your question, but the idea is, we're trying to look at all aspects and make sure that they're not just good today, but they've got maybe a 12-month, 18-month view of their solution and that they can meet it right as they're growing.
And I suppose if clients are failing and not meeting their recovery objectives, one, that's kind of the impetus to place the phone call to support or that sort of thing. And two, they're probably going to tell you about it when you're there, right? As you're having this conversation, you're going to hear about it, right?
Surely. Yeah, you bet. And, as the ambassador to information, a lot of times the TA can be an asset that way, right? In that maybe we need other specialists. Maybe there's somebody in scale that's dealing with a large file system that's part of this ecosystem, as Jim mentioned, or maybe there's storage expertise we need to bring in because there's some questions on how they could implement that better. So we can definitely engage with the broader IBM team, right, when needed, and bring those guys into the account to help.
So Todd, let me ask: is this free to the client?
It's a great question. So our charter and how we're organized is effectively, if you have your SNS and your support, and you continue as a good steward within IBM and have your support. Software and license, covered on an annual basis, we come with that program. So the TA program is just an adjunct group that is brought in based on that relationship. So yeah, as long as you're on software support with IBM, the TA team is here to help you.
How do I get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's two things. One, there are assigned accounts within the business that we have been given as kind of our phase one. And then we have a second group. We've got a great team lead, Kavita, who works with the CSMs, which is a much broader team. And we do things like office hours within a global basis. So if there's a client who has challenges or they feel like they might like to have some of the TAs look over their shoulder, they can engage with their CSM, who will then reach out to the TA team. And we'd be happy to set up a session during office hours, where we've done several of these in the States as well as globally, where we're able to just come in and kind of, like we said earlier, look over their shoulder, provide a little bit of feedback. If makes sense, we can certainly look into the health check aspects as well. But yeah, just engage your local CSM or your account rep, and we're happy to help.
Well, great. Hey, Todd, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. I think getting the information out to our clientele that are utilizing the IBM data protection portfolio and really trying to help them understand. I think what we're trying to do here is express to folks that backup is not just something you kind of set it and forget it, right? You got to give it the right care and feeding in order for it to be able to service you and your business, and hence your data, in order to be able to make sure that you're healthy and that in the event that something does happen, you're well protected. And so I appreciate you sharing this with us. And should anyone identify that they want to be able to have a health check in their environment and they are a Spectrum Protect or a Protect Plus client, please reach out to your IBM or your IBM Business Partner. Let them know you've heard about this and that you'd like to have someone come in and just kind of give you an overview and kind of let you know where you are, and that and then you can take it from there. And especially when it comes to the 7.1 end of life, if you were running that in your environment, and you're gonna need to upgrade before the end of the year, and you just kind of want to get a better picture as you're going through that process, please reach out to your IBM sales rep or IBM business partner, and we'll be sure to come in and give you a hand. So
great. Yeah, appreciate you having us. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the time. Good to see you guys.
No, thank everybody for getting up early this morning and jumping on the phone. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.